Good evening, everyone. I'm Sergio Lara Bercial, co-founder of the iCoachKids global movement, and I'm based at Leeds Beckett University in the UK. We are going to kick things off by talking about the power of good coaching. Whether it's coaching at the professional or the grassroots level, or advocating in the public and private sectors, good coaching is something that all of our panelists believe in. Coaches can make all the difference in a kid's experience with play and sport. This is especially true for kids who face more barriers to participate: girls, kids from underserved communities, and kids of all abilities. We also know that kids are more likely to love playing and keep playing when they connect with their coaches. And now, especially in the current times, adults need tools to motivate, empower, and inspire kids to reach their full potential. And that's why we are absolutely delighted to welcome Nike to the iCoach Kid family and to announce a partnership that will allow our message and movement to reach new heights. Together, we are developing a suite of coaching essentials. Let me see if I can show you those. There you are. uh, a suite of coaching essentials, five online modules that we are designed to help more people, especially those who have never coached before, become great volunteer youth coaches. Our five coaching essentials modules will help coaches create a fun, inclusive, and safe environment for all kids, regardless of gender, background, or ability. Principles that I know our guests believe in and want to discuss. So, without further ado, let's introduce the panel. Jill Ellis was the coach of the United States women's national soccer team from 2014 to October 2019. In that period, she won two FIFA Women's World Cups in 2015 and 2019, making her the only the second coach in history to win consecutive World Cups. Jill currently serves as an ambassador for US Soccer and is working with the federation to raise the number of female coaches in the US at all levels of the game. Our next panelist is Houda Loukili. He's a grassroots coach and a former Dutch youth kickboxing champion whose career was cut short due to an accident. However, turning that setback into a strength, Houda now works as a professional consultant and public speaker, leveraging her social pedagogical background and time in the ring to inspire her audiences. Next, John Bales. John Bales is the president of the International Council for Coaching Excellence, the world's largest community of coaching organizations. He is a leading expert in coach education and development, global sport and coaching systems, and sport organization management. And finally, last but not least, Caitlin Morris is the general manager of social and community impact at Nike. Made to Play is Nike's commitment to getting kids moving through play and sport. Caitlin leads the Made to Play global portfolio, which emphasizes coaching as well as increasing the participation of girls and kids from underserved communities. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. How's everybody? Give us a wave. Very good. Listen, let's crack on. The first question that I have for you today, it's a pretty open question to all of you. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you can share with us the first time you witnessed the power of good coaching, whether that was as a player, as a coach, or as a parent, what was your takeaway? Who'd like to go first? Give us a nod.
I'll
There
go.
you go, Caitlin. You go first.
So, even though I spend all of my professional days thinking about how to create early positive experiences for kids in sport, my first real observation is very personal as a parent. My son Nathan, around the age of 6, announced he was terrible at basketball. So you can imagine it was a little bit of a battle to get him to participate in the youth league at 8. Um, but with some friendly peer pressure, he showed up. I was worried. And then I met his coach, Coach Brooks, and I wasn't worried anymore because Coach Brooks really knew what a good coach needed to do. And a good coach needs to see every child, celebrate their contribution, and encourage teammates to do the same. So while Nathan had already decided he wasn't going to shoot a basket for the benefit of the team, his coach celebrated his defense. And of course, when they did the sort of the compliment circle at the end of each game, his more assertive teammates celebrated how well he passed. And you know, he felt great, and it's testament to that coach that he stayed in that league for 3 years. I should sort of then quickly say, since now he has found his sport, he's a fencer, that a great coach knows you have to make parents part of the extended team. Because as the saying goes, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I think that great coaches not only focus on keeping the kid at the center, but making sure that the parents do too.
Fantastic, Katie. And I'm gonna take one thing you said there, celebrating every child. How important is that? Is fantastic. Okay, so who's gonna share next an experience of the power of good coaching?
I mean, I can. Hi there,
Go
everybody.
ahead, Jill.
All right. First of all, hello to the global audience. It's so great to be a part of this, and thank you for involving me. So I was probably the person who influenced me the most, even in my choice of a career, was my father. He was my first coach, and I wasn't able to play sort of organized football or soccer in England. But when we came to America, my father started an academy, and so every day during the summer, 10 weeks of summer, I would go out, and I would like to say my father is a masterful teacher. It didn't matter if he was working with 6 year olds or 20 year olds. You could see that they were fully engaged. I think the capacity for someone to engage them in their learning process, it helps make a great coach. And my father would he would just be relatable, and he would involve them, and every gain, he would celebrate every step that these children or these players took in their journey, and get really excited. He was very animated. And I think the other thing, my father, his mantra for his academy that he started was winning is to learn. And so he just philosophically embraced that it wasn't about the trophy, it wasn't about the medal. It was really about this development, about this growth, about getting one day better. And I think children found that contagious. And I always say the mark of a good coach is if your player wants to come back to training the next day. And my dad's players would flock back and be excited to take one step further in their development.
Wow, so much to go through there, Jill. Fantastic contribution there around. I love a masterful teacher. Okay, someone that can really engage people in the learning process. Winning is to learn. Um, Making sure they come back. I mean, that's so important. And hopefully over the course of today's conference, we're going to touch on so many of those things. Thank you so much. I'm going to go come to Houda next. Houda, give us a bit of your experience of great coaching. What did great coaching look like for you?
Yeah, of course, my mother is also a good coach, but I want to talk about kickboxing today. When I was 11 years old, I started kickboxing, and I was facing some personal challenges as a teenage girl. And my coach was the person who was always there for me, encouraging me every step of the way. And his positive way of coaching and the personal attention that I received during my training helped me to bring out my confidence and strength in every aspect of my life and overcome many challenges in and outside the boxing ring. So looking back, he was such strong role model in my life, someone to encourage, support, and inspire me to be the best version of myself. And he was also the person who showed me the power of positive coaching and actually inspired me to choose this path for myself and do the same for others.
And who that's, I mean, you've touched on a couple of things there that are really close to my heart. The idea of the coach being influential, not only in the ring, but outside of the ring, really being someone that can support you through your journey through life. And in your case, really when you were a teenager, and the challenges that you faced at the time. So that is so powerful. And again, I'm sure we're going to get onto that later on today. And I love the idea of positive coaching that we I was actually listening to a podcast around positive psychology this morning, of all things. And when you said that, just really made me smile, because it's so important that we keep a positive outlook all the time. Thanks, Huda. I'm going to move over to John. John, give us your first experience, or something that really you can remember around the power of good coaching.
Yeah, so first, thanks, Sergio. But what an incredible network we have with us today. This is really outstanding. Yeah, at a personal level, my first coach as an 11-year-old in canoe kayak was Herky Jordan. He loved the sport. He loved working with young children. He was patient, fun to be around, and we all just developed such a dedication to him and to the sport and developed that love of sport that I think really can grow at that age. So he was an excellent teacher, and I think that's such an important element of being a good coach with children.
And
And
that
he's a tremendous influence through my whole life. I still look back to those days.
and that's amazing, really. That uh, when the coach is someone that actually loves the sport and communicates that love, that's when we get people to work very hard and fall in love with the sport. Really, someone said to me a while back that you can't really force people into excellence. You have to love them into excellence, and that's a great example, John. Um, so again, so we've touched on a really big number of things in these first quick answers. So I'm gonna go now one by one, and I'm gonna ask you some further questions individually, to keep building this picture of what youth sport really can do, and what the future may look like for youth sport. So Jill, I'm gonna come to you really, and perhaps building on what you were saying about your dad. And again, sorry, before you go, I was really happy to see that there was a positive relationship between your dad and yourself, even if he was your coach, because
Yes.
that's something that for a lot of parents, it's a difficult thing because they end up having to coach their teams, and it makes things hard because you're coaching your own kid, and it's a difficult situation. So that it was nice to hear that your dad was able to manage that situation really well, which I sometimes don't do very well with my own children. Okay, but anyway, what do you think is what do you believe is the ultimate role of a coach? What do coaches really do?
Yeah, I've actually I've thought about this a lot, and I've been asked this question many times, and I kind of summarized it by saying I think coaches are caretakers of dreams. It's this idea that we are, it's a service industry, right? In terms of we're trying to give, and ultimately what you're trying to do as a coach is you're trying to take someone's hopes and dreams and goals and bring them to fruition in some capacity, in some meaningful way, try and assist this young person on their journey, on their pursuit of whatever their goal might be. So that's kind of how I sort of summarize it in terms of a role of a coach. But, I think in terms of what we do, I think it comes down to three things for me. It's about caring, it's about teaching, and it's about inspiring. I think those are the three sort of cornerstones for me as a coach. I think first and foremost, especially when you're working with young players in their formative years, it is about connecting with them, and it's about feeding their passion. I think when you're working with young people, it's not probably the over coaching of the X's and O's and the tactics and the technique. It's about wanting them to love the game and fall in love with the game. So I think, ultimately, as a coach, you have to know and understand who your audience is and care about them as a person. When I was working with the senior players last summer, to know them outside of just being athletes, to show that they were people that you wanted to work with, you knew them more than just as soccer players, you knew them as people. I think that's very important in terms of the whole picture of a coach. I think the teaching element, as players start to get older and they start to sort of matriculate into maybe a specific sport, then certainly I think that you owe it to these young people to arm them with the skills and the tools to help them be successful, or at least help them grow and develop. So I think then at that point, it's making sure that you are a good teacher of the technique. And when I mean technique at the appropriate time. It's making sure, sometimes I've gone out to fields and I've watched little 7 and 8 year olds, and the coach is trying to teach them a really specific, intricate set piece. And you're kind of like, it's got to be age appropriate. And so I think the teaching part is, again, it's knowing your audience, it's understanding, what is going to resonate with them, what do they need. And certainly for the younger players, it is this idea of making sure that they are fundamentally sound in their base techniques, but all the while having fun. I think that's the art of being a coach. And then the inspiration piece as a coach, you're I think one of the things that's great about sport is it's not easy, and there's challenges and there's pitfalls and there's highs and there's lows. But I think one of the things that's important as a coach is that you help people understand where those highs and lows fall into their development. Meaning, even with struggle and hardship, you can inspire as a coach to make sure that they understand that that is a part of their learning process. So I think as a coach, inspiring, with the senior women's national team, it wasn't about going out and being rah rah. It was making sure that they felt comfortable and confident, that they had the skills, that they had each other's backs, and they were prepared for this moment. And that was one of the things that I would share with them, and I would share with young players. You're built for this. You're made for this. And go out there and enjoy it, even if it's as big as a World Cup final or your first little soccer game. It really is about living in the joy of the moment of playing sport.
You said something there that is absolutely beautiful. One of the most beautiful phrases I've heard for a long time. This idea of being a caretaker of dreams. It gave me goosebumps when you were saying it, really, um, because actually, what a be. We are normally a lot of the times we talk about coaches sometimes not being recognized, and particularly volunteer coaches don't get enough recognition for the work they do. But even if we can ourselves just think of ourselves as caretakers of dreams, that's a great recognition. Even if we can do that just by ourselves. And I love the other point you made about the fact that things have to be age appropriate. Because a lot of the times where we go wrong is when we're trying to feed these 7-year-olds something that is just not they're not ready for that. Um, if I may ask you just another quick question there. You talk about inspiration a lot, and I have to come clean with you here, okay? Because I think I've watched your Netflix documentary 3 times in the last. But talk a bit more about this idea of inspiring people, even particularly when things are a bit rough, really, when things are not going well.
Yes, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's acknowledging that just like life, sport reflects that in terms of the hard pieces are actually what make the good pieces happen. And so I think the tough moments, it's not letting those moments sort of cripple you or paralyze you. It's understanding that those moments are necessary for this continued growth. I mean, I think ultimately all of us probably on this call today understand that it's the moments that have stretched us and challenged us and stressed us. Those are the moments that have actually been probably the biggest moments of growth. And I think that's important to remind young people that, I tell them that Abby Wambach, who's one of our most iconic players ever, she got cut from every youth national team, that Megan Rapinoe has had 3 torn ACLs, that nobody lands on top of the mountain, that it is a climb, it is a journey. So I think when I talk about, people finding their passion and finding their inspiration, it really is about, what lights them up, what gets them out of bed every morning. And it's finding that. One of the things I say to parents, they're like, oh, how can I help my kid? And especially kids that are playing a lot of different sports, and the parents say, should they specialize? And I said, no, just feed their passion, whatever that might be right now. Just feed their passion, and support them. And to your point earlier, it's not to coach them, it is to support them and encourage them, because the sport itself, life itself, will deal us enough challenges and enough setbacks and moments of growth that parents should be there alongside, just being supportive.
And that's interesting, really, because one of our jobs, really, either as a coach or as a parent, and I think there are lots of similarities between being a coach and being a parent, is that we have to let them fall, and we just have to be there to help them, to support them getting back up, really. And obviously, I think back to your point about being age appropriate, the size of the fall have to be considerate of the age of the child, okay? Because we don't want to really throw people in the deep end like that, but we don't want to be too overprotective, really, or do everything for them. Fantastic, Jill. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna move to Houda. Houda, you really your face really lit up and you smiled when you were reflecting on the impact of your coach when you were younger. Um, so explain a bit more. What was it that he did to be able to put your needs first, to really be so centered, so centered on what you needed to do, really. What did your coach do to be so focused on helping Houda?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I was going through a rough time back then, and I think one of the things I appreciated most was that my coach never pretended or ignored my personal circumstances. So he was also the one who really helped make me comfortable with my choice of wearing a hijab during practice. This was a huge issue for me, and I often felt embarrassed talking about it when I was so young with people because I was the only one wearing the hijab in the gym. And it was also very difficult to keep it in one place. And I always had to fix it with elastics and tape. And at one point, I was even worried I will have to give up to not play sport anymore. And another example of my coach is when we were struggling to pay contribution and there were no grants available, he still let us play. And that was so important for me and for my siblings. And my coach, however, was so understanding and supportive and helping me through all these difficult moments, and always encouraged me to push through and not give up. And it was so important for me. And he, how can I say that? He really showed me the power and difference that personal attention can have on a kid's experience and perception of sport. That's why I think it's so important that children, and especially those from other backgrounds, from underserved communities or difficult backgrounds, get a chance to have a positive role model in their life. In my case, I want to help girls in the same way because I strongly believe that if you can see it, you can be it.
So talk a little bit more about your role now. How are you using everything you learned from your coach and also from your personal experience and circumstances as a young girl trying to do sport? How are you using that now in your day-to-day to help others?
It's for me so important to create a safe place for the girls, where they have respect from me and from the other girls and other coaches. I have chosen to give extra attention to focus more on the girls because I've experienced that they need a different approach. Compliments are not always giving, and that is something I want to do. And maybe, do you want to talk more about this, or I can do it for an hour?
I do want to talk more about this really because it's really interesting. And
Okay.
I was really keen. You know, you said something that you said that again gave me goosebumps was my coach never ignored my personal issues, and I think that's great because a lot of the times I think that as coaches we feel that our job is to teach people the sport, but I have this little catchphrase that I use all the time with my students where we say we have to build relationships before we build skills. Okay, and it seems that that's what your coach did, that he was constantly focused on building the relationship with you, that to support you as a person. Really, is that the case, that your coach saw you as a person before seeing you as an athlete?
Yes, that's right. I can give you example. I can give that the girls I coach at the Islamic primary school this year can choose to sport with their hijab, okay? And maybe not all the coaches say, okay, it's okay to sport with your hijab. And they have, and I had certain conditions that I happy to meet. So my condition was also to wear a long trouser. And if the girl wants to play gymnastic with long trouser, it's for me okay. And when what I have learned from my own coach is when I go with them to other sport clubs, I make sure that there is a female coach, because for the parents of these girls, it's very important. And I also make sure that I'm accessible. So when parents want to talk with me from via WhatsApp or something like that, that's possible. So you make it easy. You make it easy to get them involved to sports, and that's what I learned from my coach, because he did that with me, and now I can do that with the girls who I'm coaching.
Brilliant, Huda. So really, really about keeping the person at the forefront. Really, thanks, Huda. I'm gonna move over to Caitlin. Really, and Caitlin, I need you to really tell me, why is coaching important to Nike? What's it got to do with Nike?
It's got everything to do with Nike, Sergio. At Nike, our mission statement is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And we're probably one of the few companies where we have a corollary on our mission statement, which is there's an asterisk that says, if you have a body, you're an athlete. The problem is fewer and fewer children today believe that. Whether you're my son at 6 announcing that you're no good at basketball, or most 8 to 10-year-olds are deciding at that point whether or not they think of themselves as athletes. And having that positive relationship with a coach is a game changer. It will make or break whether or not they decide to stay in sport. So sport isn't going to thrive if we don't have coaches out there making it thrive with kids. And so, I've heard so much from Houda, who's been such a wonderful partner to Nike already, around sort of the importance of having a relatable role model. And for us, that training is almost sort of, it's the beginning and the middle and the end of the whole experience. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when you care, that's great, but caring is only the first step. You need strategies. You need strategies to be able to make sport fun for kids of all abilities. How do you get the kid who's best on the court to also have fun, as much fun as the kid who's just learning how to play? You need strategies to organize yourself when you've got 20 kids that you've never met before. How are you going to form those relationships if you don't have some sort of roadmap to get you there? And we've actually had a lot of experience in our commitment to training and developing coaches through our own employees. So Nike Community Ambassadors, we lead from the center here. Nike Community Ambassadors are retail employees who go out and volunteer in their own communities to coach. But much as people assume that because they're Nike, they're sport. And one of the great experiences we had was a young group of retail employees going to a PE class in Seattle. And the PE teacher saying, great, you're here, bye. And they're there and they've got 20 kids or 30 kids. They have no idea what they're doing. And that was before we created Nike Community Ambassador Program, where we train all of these ambassadors to go out on the basics of emotional connection, adjusting games for all abilities. And we now have more than 5,500 coaches around the world doing exactly that. And because they're from the communities, they are often reflecting the kids they're serving. So whether that's from the diversity lens or from a girls lens, we know that around the world, far fewer coaches are women. We need more Jill Ellises in the world. But all girls need a chance to have a relatable role model. And so we've also sort of worked on not just the training piece directly, but also how do we build tools for the field. So one of the things we did is we worked with experts and community program partners around the world to create the Coaching Girls Guide as an example of, hey, our job is to partner with others. Team impact is a team sport. And how do we sort of fill gaps in the field with things that we think are necessary? It's also why we're so excited to partner with iCoachKids, who clearly have a leadership place in this space. But what can we do together so that coaches don't just feel trained, but they also feel like they have a community, that peer support. It's hard to be great on your own. And how do you have that network of peers who can help you and encourage you in your own journey?
And it's amazing, really, because you mentioned caring is not enough, really. You have to have some strategies, and I think that's where we come together really nicely, okay? Because we have some of those strategies, and like you say, with your own development programs, that's the space that we're in as well, where we want to make sure that we've got 2,000 people with us today, right? And they all care, and they all have some strategies, and we just want to add to that. If you want that arsenal of strategies really for everybody. So that's a fantastic addition to our family, obviously. And you made me laugh as well, because when you said you got thrown in there with 20 kids, and I remember those days. When I started coaching 20 odd years ago, and the first time I went into a primary school, and they just threw me in there with 30 kids. Um, in the middle of Manchester in the UK, and with my Spanish accent, and I was terrified. Okay, um, and I wish I had some of those strategies already in my bag, which I didn't at the time. So hopefully that's what we can do. Thanks, Caitlin. I'm gonna move over to John now, and John, the question for you is a bit complex, really. But what is the current picture? What do we know about the volunteer youth coaching workforce today?
Yeah, so there is some excellent research out there now. So we are learning more and more about really what the current reality is for youth coaching throughout Europe and around the world. Um, First of all, an interesting fact is that coaching is the largest workforce in Europe, that there's over 9 million people coaching within the EU, which makes it the largest workforce, bigger than teaching or doctors. So it is a very big workforce, but it's also primarily a volunteer workforce. So the vast majority of coaches within Europe are volunteer, and most, about half, come from states that don't have any regulations or requirements. So it's very open entry, but not a regulated profession at this point in time. There's some excellent coach education programs out there, but again, they don't differentiate, and there's been several comments around this, that they don't really differentiate about across the different contexts. And as we know, and as comments have been made, that coaching high performance athletes can be very different from coaching children. And so I think that's one of the real reasons why iCoachKids is such an important initiative, to really provide more of those tools and ideas specific to coaching children. And one other thing we know is that women are underrepresented in coaching. They're very underrepresented at the high performance level. Only 11% of Olympic coaches are women, even though almost 50% of the athlete pool at an Olympics is women. But even at the developmental level, women are underrepresented, and it varies across countries and certainly across sports, but about 30% of coaches are women at the developmental levels. So again, there's a lot of work to be done there to make the environment inviting and supportive to encourage more women to coach.
Thanks, John. It is really it's fascinating when you look at the fact that it is really the largest workforce, and it is completely unregulated, if you want, in many countries. It really puts it into perspective, really. And we're gonna start bringing the panel to a close. We've got 3 minutes left, and I wanted to again have a final question to all of you. We've got nearly 750 people with us right now, plus the people on YouTube and everybody that's going to be watching this on the YouTube channel over the next few days. If you could ask everyone in the audience to do one thing to help improve a child's sport experience, what would that be? And I'm going to start with Caitlin. Okay, Caitlin, what would be your one thing that you would want people to do?
I think the one thing I would focus on is making sure that you're creating an inclusive space. There is no reason why any child shouldn't be able to participate. And so when you see one sitting on the sidelines, ask yourself why, and what can you do to bring them in? Whether that is making them feel welcome, whether they wear the hijab or not, whether it is changing the game so that different abilities feel like they're still competing at a level that's interesting for them, but just make it inclusive.
Thanks, Caitlin. So inclusivity, Houda, what would it be for you? What would be the one thing for you?
Um, We cannot forget the importance of parents in coaching. Parents are more involved than they used to be sometimes. That's a good thing, but it's also a skill to manage their expectations. As a mother, I also find it important to know how my child is doing at the sports club, and therefore also give this opportunity to the other parents. Parents need to see you as a role model. They want to identify with you. You need to have respect for their culture and respect their needs. So yeah, that's, I think that's very important to not, to don't forget it, to involve the parents also, because the kids can't say, okay mom, I'm going to the sports club. No, mom or dad, yeah, are very important.
Thanks. So we got inclusivity and parents, and we've got a minute to go. So, John, you got 30 seconds. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, for me, I think it's really making it fun, making sure that the kids want to come back for the next practice, for the next season. And what does it mean to make it fun? I think it's about social interaction, being with their friends, and about getting better, about improving their skills. So those are important aspects for the coach.
Thanks, John. So, making it fun. Jill, wrap it up.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think as a coach, it's important to sometimes remember why you fell in love with sport, and so think about that when you go to your audience, who your young players. Remember what brought you to the game. Remember what you love about the game, and make sure those things. I think sometimes, especially in this country, we see coaches overcoaching. It's do this, step here, play here, put, and so sometimes we have to remember that element of free play and allowing the players to make decisions and not over coaching them in that environment. Sure, technique's fine, safety's important, but also remember why you got and fell in love with the game.
Thank you. Well, all four of you, we are on time or thereabouts, a minute out. Okay, great job. Thank you for joining us today. John and Caitlin for your work driving more people into coaching. Jill and Houda for your work on and off the field and for being incredible role models for all coaches, but especially for female coaches. Have a great rest of the conference and